Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room. I'm Robin Adair, and with me as always, my co-host with the most, John Juricic. And John, we have so much to talk about. Once again, thanks to that yellow-haired idiot from White House, Donald Trump, who is racking and ruining the entire planet right now, I think. He's out of control.
One-man dumpster fire.
Dumpster fire, and he's directing a lot of his ire at Canada. He's really mad at Canada. He's mad at Doug Ford in Ontario, who's going to do ads down in the States and get directly in front of the American people, who I think are getting very concerned, to say the least, about some of the things that are happening. We'll dig into that more. But Trump is talking about raising now the tariffs on aluminum and on steel in Canada, 50% tariffs. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. And you can see from this comment that Trump is still dedicated to his tariff strategy.
Well, I think the tariffs are going to be the greatest thing we've ever done as a country. It's going to make our country rich again. We have many companies, as you know, auto companies. They're opening up plants now. We've had 4 or 5 announced already, but many more are coming. And we're basically going to take back the money, a lot of the money that we've given away over many decades. We've lost our jobs. We've lost our factories. We've lost 90,000 factories since the beginning of NAFTA.
All of the polls, something he does listen to, in the States show American support for Trump collapsing. And his policies are heading for the dumpster fire I referred to just a minute ago. On top of that, something that he'll actually, I believe, watch and be concerned about, the stock market is floundering. It's now off significantly. As we speak, I think it's down another 1 or 2%. This is stuff he will listen to, that he will be impacted by. Nothing that the rest of humanity cares about. His business and his money. Let's see how that goes. Here's what I hate about this man, and I hate a lot about him, and I could spend the better part of half an hour talking about how much I hate about him. But
do tell. Oh, do tell.
However, this is the most singular worst piece about dealing with this person, is there is no way in which to rationally and objectively react to him, because he just lies and makes impulsive policy on his truth social tweets, whatever you want to call them. So this is the worst part. In business, no matter how bad it gets, at least you can sort of muddle your way through with facts and lessons learned and objective thinking. We cannot do that with this man, and that's what is stumping all of us.
We also have to clean up our act in Canada. We've been slithering along on some policies that just don't work anymore because we just say, well, the Americans will look after it. Well, now the Americans certainly are looking after it. We have not matched our commitments that we promised way back in 2014 for our NATO commitments of 2% of the Canadian economy. We're at 1.3, one of the lowest in NATO. And it's a blemish on the country. Our borders are not as secure as they should be. Now, there isn't a flood of fentanyl going down to the United States, but our borders need to be toughened up. And I don't think this is all brain surgery. And all these tariffs we have internally in the country, we're celebrating now. We're celebrating that we're removing tariffs internally in the country. What were we doing all along? Yeah. Why does it take Donald Trump and threats of annexing Canada and making us the 51st state for us to pull up our pants and be big boys in this world and stop acting like a bunch of children? It's time for Canada to get its act together. Now we have somebody else at the helm of the Liberal Party. We have Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, with a mixed track record on managing the economy in both those countries, and he was Justin Trudeau's chief financial advisor over the last few years. So if you didn't like the way the economy was being run under Justin, do you think there'll be a big change under Mark Carney? I guess the jury's out on that. Carney got in by a landslide. None of the other candidates even were close. And so he gets up on the podium, says Canada will never be the 51st state. And he had other things to say about Canada's relationship with Donald Trump's America.
We didn't ask for this fight. The Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
All right. Here's my read on Mark Carney. And I've got positives and I've got negatives. And I'll end up with my summary. The man has got an extraordinarily strong understanding of the economy. Great economist. He's actually Dr. Mark Carney. His doctorate is in economic policy. Highly educated. I think you could list about 10 degrees after his name. Experienced in economic crisis. He's been involved centrally in the last couple of big economic crises of the last 15 years.
And he was in England during Brexit.
Exactly. So it's an international scope and experience. Here are my negatives. Strong climate commitment. Read the room, Mark Carney. We are all very much in favor of fixing climate change, but not at the expense of economic growth and almost literally everything else. So I'm concerned about that piece trailing through into potentially a new government. And here's I think the weakest part of Mark Carney. I think that will ultimately, he'll pay the price for this. He's never been a politician. It's a different game. The business of politics is not the business of business. And can he handle an emotional, subjective criticism? I don't think so. So here's my summary of Mark Carney. Brilliant man, but I think he is too calm. I think he's too reserved, and he's never been a politician. And at this stage, Canadians want the exact opposite.
Well said, John, and there's no question the jury is out on Mark Carney. I think we're going to have a chance to exercise our feelings about him very quickly, because I think we're going to be into an election in no time. Yeah. And it's going to be tight, because the polls show that the Conservatives actually still hold a lead, sometimes a fairly slight lead, but across most of the polls, the Tories are still in the lead, the Conservatives, but it's going to be a very tight race. We shall see. And our many, many valued followers of the Rumble Room have chimed in, and they have lots to say about Carney. They also have lots to say about Donald Trump. And Lester writes, Trump is an ignorant moron who is not smart enough to figure out that this will cost Americans big time.
Thanks, Lester. You make a great point. And by the way, our sessions here online on the Rumble Room are generating hundreds of comments. So if you want to get a sense of what the general populace online is thinking, go visit our sites on Facebook and YouTube. Anyway, lots and lots of mail is my point about the upcoming federal election race. Bill writes, my guess is Carney will call a general election ASAP and ride the honeymoon to a small majority. Pierre Poilievre told us for so long to get rid of Trudeau, axe the tax, and get an experienced hand at the economic rudder. So if Mark Carney forms government, he should thank Pierre Poilievre.
There would be some irony if that was true. And, well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Bill's right. So another interesting letter, a comment we got online from somebody who was curious about why the NDP has not been more prominent. Where is the NDP? Who do they support? Why are they not speaking out on Mark Carney? Asks Brian. Haven't heard a thing about Carney from Jagmeet Singh yet. He's somewhat invisible.
Oh, this is great. Love the comments. Meantime, if you're wondering about what Pierre Poilievre has to say about Mark Carney, well, he sure doesn't hold back.
He's the guy that sold out to Trump. 6 days after Donald Trump threatened Canada with tariffs to steal our jobs, Mark Carney announced to Brookfield shareholders that he would move his headquarters from Canada to New York. And when you asked him about it, he lied to your face. We got it in writing, and we proved it. He sold out Canada. He put his profit ahead of our people. And he did exactly what Donald Trump wanted. Never before have we had a prime minister so conflicted and compromised and yet so little scrutinized. Just like when he supported carbon taxes in Canada while investing in American coal. He opposed Canadian pipelines while his company bought Middle East pipelines. He has millions of dollars of financial interests that run against Canada's national interests. He gets rich, making Canadians poor. You can be sure about one thing. Donald Trump's going to have a briefing on his desk of all of Mark Carney's American investments. And he is going to leverage all of Carney's profit motive against the interest of the Canadian people.
So, John, I think Mark Carney, he certainly is a strong communicator. I think people's feelings about him is that they wished he could be a little bit nicer. And, he's had a reputation of being very strong on the attack. Can he be a prime minister for all? And there's some people who are uncomfortable with his style, have actually compared it in some ways to Donald Trump, which I think is a little unfair. But I also agree that he could be a little smoother and a little friendlier. It wouldn't go amiss. And everybody says, well, his wife's really nice. He must be a nice guy. So maybe that works in his favor. I know that's helped you and I out quite a bit over the years, John.
Oh, has it ever?
Quite a bit. So, we have one more comment from one of our valued viewers who is also a valued contributor to the Rumble Room. That is Mark McDonald. He is a senior columnist for the Business Examiner. And he sent us a note. Canada is at a watershed moment. If voters choose to give the Liberals another mandate, and make no mistake, Carney was the economic brains behind Trudeau, then we may never catch up. Poilievre represents an economic reset. Well, that's Mark McDonald, who's never really hidden the fact that he's largely supporting the Conservatives, so that's what he thinks right now going into the race. And we like to balance these things out, John. We want to hear from all, so we've brought in a very prominent and very vocal federal Liberal to tell us what she thinks about Donald Trump, the scourge of the world, and of course, Mark Carney. I'm talking about Sheila Orr, the former MLA. Let's zoom her in. And now with us once again, for the first time, I believe, in 2025, our friend Sheila Orr.
Yay, Sheila!
MLA, former city councillor from Saanich, and Sheila, a long-time federal Liberal. That's how we introduced you, a long-time federal Liberal. So as a long-time federal Liberal, what do you make of Donald Trump and his threats of annexing Canada and all the trade war that's going on, all the terrible things that are happening on a national, provincial, and even a regional level?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year, belated.
Absolutely, likewise.
Yeah. 24 was my annus horribilis year. 25 is my you've got to be kidding year. What is going on? I think the original Donald Trump that was voted in last time, we all were sort of dumbfounded and shocked at the way he behaved. But then we became immune to him. And then he got selected this time. And some of the things he says, we went, oh, well, that's just him. The difference between then and now is that he's older. Maybe he's slipping a little in his head, which he's been doing for a long time, but I think he's worse. He also, I believe Donald Trump is as good as the last person he talked to. I don't think he retains an awful lot of intelligent information in there. I think he has these intense conversations with his best friends, and he selects those all carefully. He likes rich people, only rich people, and he listens to them because he thinks rich people have more intelligence than people that are less rich than him. So I think, first of all, a lot of the stuff that's coming out of his mouth, it's been festering, and he maybe brings it up in a conversation, and then somebody gets onto it, and away we go. There's no rhythm to this man. There's no structure to the way he thinks. Now, Trump is known. If you remember those dreadful TV shows he used to put on, I can't remember what they called. He really believes that you dismantle a company before you rebuild it. So this is my theory, and I could be totally wrong. I think he's causing mass hysteria and chaos on purpose. He's in there doing all this stuff, talking to the last person he talked to, laying on his pillow at night, chatting to his wife, and who is, of course, Russian. And he's chatting away, and he comes up with all this stuff and all this garbage. And the next morning he comes out and he pronounces it all. And his staff, nobody seems to say anything to stop him. So, but I think he's just doing this purposely. Then when he starts to pull it all back together, he starts to look like a star. So I think, in this tariff war, the other thing too, that we all know he's very narcissistic. And we also know that, he's got this massive ego, and we're upsetting him, we're insulting him. And there's a little boy in the background stomping his feet saying, you can't do this to me. I'm a little rich boy. You can't say these things. I mean, I can't give him any more credit for intelligence than this.
Great points. And we're going to now shift northward to Canada. Obviously, Trump, tariffs, Carney, now sharing the headlines. So off the top, just recently happened, your impressions of Prime Minister Mark Carney. Is he the right man for the job? And will he win?
Well, the federal Liberals certainly believe that. I mean, obviously, I watched the convention on the weekend. I listened to the speeches, had friends there. People here were phoning for him. He got, 87 or 82% of the vote. I mean, that's a big landslide. I mean, I haven't seen that very often. So Carney's in. He's there. He's done. He's definitely going to be Prime Minister. He's running on the merits of his history, his financial history. He was a good friend to Paul Martin, and I adore Paul Martin. I ran with Paul Martin actually when I ran for the federal Liberals. So his Achilles heel is he's never been a politician. He doesn't have a seat. He's never been in politics. He's been in high finance. He made a good speech. There's no question he made a good speech. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to finances, but politics is a whole different game. When you're doing what he did, he had a lot of people around him and the public that would have applauded him and said, you're doing a great job. He has never had what we go through as politicians, and that's sort of hate.
Yeah.
What else can I say? They hate you. I mean, it's you, a car salesman, or or a talk show host. You're in there, or lawyers.
And now it's extraordinarily amplified through social media.
He's never had that. So how is he going to handle that? I don't know. He's definitely a statesman. No question about that. I think he's much more of a statesman than Trudeau was. But how is he going to cope? So right now we're in a fabulous honeymoon stage. I love it. It's great. Our numbers are good. We're looking good. But he hasn't got into the heavy stuff yet.
And the person who's going to lead him to some of that heavy stuff, of course, is Pierre Poilievre, who's already taking lots of shots, is a veteran politician, very good on the stump, speaks better French than Carney. Yeah. And we aren't into the election race yet. Sheila, you've seen so many elections come and go where parties have significant leads and they disappear. We saw that with Christy Clark when she beat Adrian Dix. Everybody thought the NDP was going to win that in a landslide. And you've seen the other things happen as well, where the party you think is going to make it, it just doesn't have the oomph. Do you have a feeling about how this election is going to go, and how much is this whole Trump thing going to influence it?
Well, if Trump continues behaving the way he does, which is probable, I think that he is going to be Carney's best friend, because the truth is we're so panicked with Trump, which we should be. It's just making Carney look better. You're right about putting him up against Poilievre. I mean, he is a seasoned politician. He knows what he's doing. He's great in debates. That could be an issue for him. However, as far as an election goes, I got two minds here. It's very clear to the party and all the pundits and everyone that's talking that we're going to be calling an election because Carney needs a seat. So what is he going to do? I've always said all along, I don't think he's going to call a snap election, but I'm going totally against the tide here. I think he'll enjoy being premier or prime minister, but it's too short for him to call a by-election. Somebody could step down and give him a seat, but he still has to go through the process. So I don't think he's going to call a snap election. I could be totally wrong because everybody's saying it's going to happen in April. Even our liberal friend. But, when you're a liberal, you all want a certain thing and you all talk a certain way. So, we all believe what we believe. But I'm not sure that he will call one.
What are
your thoughts?
Have you been involved, or are you aware, not involved is the wrong word, Are you aware of the backroom discussions that Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, alluded to a little while ago about the three parties on the left cooperating, joining against the Conservatives? Have you heard? Is there any credence to that rumor?
No, I haven't heard from the horse's mouth. I'm not really one for. I'm very much asking the person and hearing it from them. So I'm hearing rumblings, but this is Ottawa. I mean, everybody's and the NDP are going to, stand there on their. Then they're not going to win. No, I haven't heard anything solid.
Look, we're going to do a shift here. And Robin and I have chatted about this with guests and over the Rumble Room now for some time, how the whole sort of typical foundation of politics and society is really changed. And the way that we react to things is changing. And the way things are happening are changing. So let's talk about what happened just in the last little while with the BC Conservatives. Basically tearing themselves apart during their first sitting in opposition. This would otherwise have been huge news. Okay. And what was that news? Well, Dallas Brody, the BC Conservative MLA from Vancouver, Colchina, took shots at the Indigenous school in Kamloops, taking shots at former First Nation students, and claims that there's no mass grave beside the school. She was expelled. Jordan Keeley, Tara Armstrong, then quit the party in solidarity. Says party leader John Rustad is denying the truth. Sheila, you were an MLA. Tell me about party discipline. Tell me about what's going on with this Conservative Party. And therefore, but de facto, what's going on with the party politics in BC?
Well, first of all, I was under Gordon Campbell, and we were disciplined. Martin Brown, as you know, was his chief of staff, and he was very disciplined. So we didn't fall out of line too often. And when I fell out of line, and I did several times, I was rapped on the knuckles, but I was prepared to take that. I didn't care. That was just who I was, and I supported my riding. I remember somebody coming up to me and complaining and asking how I was going to vote on the issue of big game hunting. And I said, well, there isn't too much big game hunting in Victoria Hillside. So I should be voting the way I want to vote. So we were disciplined with a little bit of flexibility. And that discipline was brought on by Gordon Campbell. There's no question. He did pull in a big tent. I mean, let's be honest. I'm sitting there with Rich Coleman. We're good friends, totally opposite ends when it comes to politics. So he did that. John Rustad doesn't have that sort of, I don't want to say strength, but he
Personality.
He doesn't seem to be able to just say, look, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it. When you have a person like that, you tend to sort of agree with what they're doing. I'm not saying you fall into line. You agree with where the bus is going. Now, Rustad doesn't have that going in a specific direction, and that's the problem. We don't have the big picture. So the people that left, that ran out the room, I always find that kind of a bit silly. And the woman that made those derogatory comments, she had an issue and a point to make, and I get that. But it was when she got silly and was sort of rude.
She sounded like she was mocking the students.
Thank you. She was mocking them. That was a no-no as far as I was concerned. Doesn't matter what your issue is, you don't mock people. Doesn't matter whether you're a politician or otherwise, you don't mock people. So she did that. So shame on her for doing that. And she's gone. And two others have left. And, I've seen this before. Oh, we're going to leave. We're going to leave. We're going to be special. We're going to go off. We're going to set up a new party. Well, you're not going to set up a new party because I'll tell you why. It's not easy to set up a new party. And we already have 11 registered parties. I mean, now the NDP are in for good. We've just lost 3 people.
But do you think Rustad is at risk now internally? Do you think there's people on the right that'll say, well, if you can't manage this, we need somebody else? It has shades of Gordon Wilson. And
It
people,
does,
people
but it's
drifting
early
away
days.
from that original BC Liberal crowd that
Yeah.
won under Gordon Wilson when Rita Johnson was
Yeah.
defeated, and he couldn't hang on to that. And that's when Gordon Campbell came in. I mean,
That's right.
could you see a scenario like that happening, or can Rustad, can he right the ship?
Not immediately, but I could see that happening unless he smartens up. He's I don't want to say he's weak, but he needs to, yeah, he needs to. I don't think his personality is going to change. And that's going to be the crunch. You know, he's got to stand up and be strong, and he doesn't come over like that. I think he's a nice guy, very pleasant, but they need more than that.
Great to hear from Sheila. You know, I honestly believe that this election will hinge upon the public's concerns about what's happened in the last 9 years versus the public's concerns about what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes from down south. We'll see what that balance is and how well these political parties can handle that. Sheila is always one of our best and most lively guests. Love her. And perhaps we'll read one more lively viewer email comment before we wrap up. This one is from Jerry. Call an election as soon as possible. Carney should be able to negotiate with Daffy Donald. I'd also call him Dangerous Donald. And more importantly, Criminal Donald. And like I said earlier, I could go on for half an hour. I'm not going to do that anymore. Just provide us a logical construct from which we can reply to the idiocy.
And there's so much idiocy to go around, John. It's just incredible. And you know, one of the interesting things about this whole phenomena of Donald Trump and of course a federal election happening is just it's taking all the oxygen out of the room when it comes to things going on closer to home, like this revolt going on with the BC government. Here's David Eby passes the largest debt-ridden budget in British Columbia history, hardly a word about it. And now there's defections over on the Conservative side. Yeah, it's covered, but people aren't really paying attention. They're more concerned about the fact that all their wine and liquor is being pulled off the shelves from the States. They're going, whoa, what happened to my booze? Where's my favorite Jack Daniels? But anyway, it's very interesting to see how things are shifting around in Canada. We'll try to follow it as much as we can on the Rumble Room, but for now, it's time for us to wrap. Again, perhaps you could tell people how they can follow this show.
Absolutely, and people are. We're getting great responses and great comments. So we always encourage that. And we also want to give a quick thank you to West Shore Web Hosting and Kelly Darwin for hosting our website. We have a website where all of these links live. You can see at the top of this little Zoom bar here. We're also on Facebook. We're also on X, even though it was hacked recently. We are trying hard to stay current on X. We've got a YouTube site with over 500 videos. We have an audio podcast. You can listen to us without watching us. You can watch us on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. So I'm John Juricic. I can't say strongly enough. The strong Canadian with elbows up, baby, and squarely up Donald Trump's nose.
And John, it's inspiration. I like following behind you as you elbow your way into a room, especially if it's full of Americans. I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.